Let's talk specialisms. Let's talk specialist automotive. We've obviously got a really rich array of specialist manufacturers here in the UK, from public transport vehicles through to specialty sports vehicles, etc., and plenty in between. So we're going to have a panel discussion now about the future for those organisations. We will begin, as ever though, with our panel discussions with a short video.
Our industry, the automobile industry, is at its period of the biggest disruption since the invention of the automobile 130 years ago.
The approach to specialist manufacturing should not be industry specific, but should rather focus on the technologies involved. This technology focus will enable the UK to become a leader across many manufacturing industries, not just one.
But the one thing that we do need to do in both of those areas is invest very heavily in apprenticeships, invest very heavily into higher education to make sure that the UK has some of the best skills in the world.
I think the government are doing some really good things. They've announced 4,000 buses, they've announced hydrogen strategies, they've announced zebra schemes. What I'd like more is the connection of all those dots.
The challenges that all specialist manufacturers face, and this kind of sense that there is of opportunity, but also of kind of massive and sudden transformation. Michael, kick us off with kind of an overview, as it were.
I mean, we're coming out probably one of the most difficult times that the industry's ever faced. You know, we were all talking about Brexit about 14 months ago, and that very quickly changed to COVID and a pandemic and a period of complete uncertainty where no matter what you've done in your career, nothing could prepare yourself for what you were about to face. And I think if you look at the industry, despite everything, we've handled it quite well. We had good government support, which obviously saved jobs. But what we can see now is, I think, two main things. The first is try and recover that pre-COVID volume that we'd seen, that good growth, and we've got to move back into those markets, make sure that we've got vehicles which are relevant for those markets. And, you know, ironically, the market we've seen biggest volume progression has been in China. We've seen good recovery in Europe. UK, not so much. You know, this period of the dealerships being down for so long had affected many of our outlets, but we're starting to see that volume recovery really coming back. And then we're about to enter, you know, the tipping point where technology is going to take over. Our industry will be completely different no matter what segment you work in. And we see that in the luxury segment. Ruth and I have been talking before this panel event to sort of share notes on what we see. And we're about to make this progression into hybrid and then full battery electric vehicles, so that by the end of the decade, the number of internal combustion engines will be significantly less. So, you know, we've come out of this very dark period into something where the opportunities are great, and we've got to be ready for it.
Yeah. Joerg, tell us more about those opportunities.
Well, I mean, as I was quoted, I believe we live in a time of big changes, of course, right? I mean, everyone is talking about disruptions, and I try to see the positive. I mean, negative is clear. I mean, COVID hit us all. Market was down 50%. We still try to recover. We have all the same issues, cash flow, liquidity. I mean, we're all talking the same language here. But I try to see the opportunities. And what you can clearly see, there are plenty of them in the future. I firmly believe so. You know, our industry is changing the biggest way it had ever changed before, right? And there are new mega trends coming up which help us and which our business is focusing on. You have on the one hand the topic of sustainability, zero emission zones on the one hand. It's a big mega trend, you can't stop that anymore. And on the other hand, we have things like e-commerce growing like hell. The whole what we call Amazonization. These are big mega trends, and our company LEVC, I mean, we try to take advantage of that one, and because if you are in that segment, if you offer an e-van which we are now doing, if you offer an e-shuttle, you certainly take advantage of these new trends like sustainability and so on. And just an example, quickly, Justin, say a light van market across Europe, UK and European Union, it's about 600,000 vans per year. This is a huge market, and it's almost all diesel and petrol at the moment. There is almost no electric van on offer, 600,000 cars a year. But this segment has to change because of growing e-commerce and people thinking more in sustainable categories. The customers want to have their goods delivered in a sustainable way. So I think this will change. And I believe that segment of 600,000 cars a year will change more towards electric cars, electric vans. That's exactly where we are getting in with our new van. And therefore, I believe with all the challenge that we have, and really we are all struggling still, I have to say, there is a huge future potential if you get the right product now into the market.
Well, let's talk then a bit more about the technologies that excite you, as it were. Ruth, turning to you, what are the areas where you think, yes, this is where we are going now?
Well, I think where we're going and where we need to go are almost two separate but very interlinked things, because the reality of where we are as an industry at the moment is the regulators and almost the customer demand will dictate where we need to go. And step number one in that is the road to electrification. But really, the road is a road towards net zero emissions. And I think the technology roadmap and bringing us there is one of the opportunities that really faces the UK and the automotive industry at the moment. There's a massive challenge from moving from ICE engines to hybrid to EV, as Michael said, but as I'm sure as you'll touch on in a moment, there's more to the road to net zero emissions than just electrification. But in the immediate term, for a company like McLaren, that challenge of EV technology, putting an EV sports car on the road is a major opportunity and major challenge for us, both in terms of being able to source the technologies and develop the technologies to get us there, to deliver the attributes that we need for our cars. But I think what we can't forget as an industry is all of the supporting technologies that go with that road to electrification. Very much conversation at the moment is about batteries. Where do you source battery cells? Where will we manufacture batteries? There's a huge amount of supporting technologies that are also required in order to make those very not just supercar electric vehicles, but mass market electric vehicles. And one of the things we have here in the UK is a thriving, innovative manufacturing industry that is developing those supporting technologies. From McLaren's perspective, we're looking very much at lightweighting. If we talk about batteries very simply, batteries are heavy things. If you put something heavy in a car, no matter how hard you work on the battery, if something becomes heavier, the car will become less efficient. And efficiency is what we're trying to drive. So lightweighting, taking weight out of the rest of the vehicle, is really important. There's an awful lot of activity around e-motors, around inverters here in the UK. And I think the opportunity we have, as well as the challenge, is to develop that innovation here for the greater good of the wider industry.
Buta, same question to you then, really. What are the areas that you're focusing on, you're particularly interested in?
I think one real thing that people need to understand is, one club isn't going to hit every single ball. And what I mean by that is, if everything went battery EV, then there'll be a shortage of raw materials, shortage of, increasing in cost, and just a restriction of the market. So what you really have to do is take a step back and say, each industry will have a lead technology. So I think things like the car industry, battery electric seems very, very sensible. But the larger, the heavier the vehicle, then you have to start thinking differently, because batteries are very heavy. The range then is reduced. Air conditioning, refrigeration is required on certain transport. That takes a lot of energy. So you can't just do that with batteries. So you have to look at other vehicles like hydrogen, and then even hydrogen engines, or what's coming more and more clear is things like ammonia as a source as well. So those technologies are harder to talk about right now because they're developing and more nascent, but actually suit the industry probably better. And the charge to battery is because it seems to be really, really easy, as in it's available, everybody understands it, everyone's got a phone, they know how to charge. But you just, again, take a step back, and if you're in an urban environment, say central London, and you've got a car, where do you charge it? You don't really have anywhere to park, you don't have a charging station. you haven't got an infrastructure with regards to power stations, substations that can support it. Those are very costly items. So you have to spread the load across technologies to support total change to zero emissions. And that's what the bus industry is doing more and more. It's going to hydrogen as a balance. So more urban routes are probably battery electric, but more city-to-city routes are more likely going to be hydrogen or other technologies.
That's the long term. Can I just, and also in a sense, the positive side of it, I suppose we ought to talk a little bit about the effect of the impact of the pandemic on all of you. Michael, where are we now in terms of the impact and getting out of it?
I think, as Joerg said, it's been a difficult period and we're probably not completely out the other side. First key thing was getting employees back to work. And, you know, because of what we've been through, it's not been the most comfortable thing to return to the workplace. On the way down on the train, I totted up that we've tested 90,000 individual tests to get our employees feeling safe in the workplace. So every employee since Christmas has been tested twice per week. We made sure that the workplace was very comfortable for them in terms of how they felt when they returned to work. So, you know, this is the first tick in the box. This is the thing that had to be done and has been done. Secondly, one of my biggest fears is that when we come through the other end, the government support has been very good and absolutely needed. My real worry is what the supply chain looks like when we get through this and whether we really have sustainable, financially viable suppliers, particularly in the UK. They've been through Brexit, they've been through reduced volumes, and now we need to see that supply base build up. And I have a real worry that once we get through this, once the government support, particularly on the furlough scheme, stops, we're going to see some quite fragile areas in the supply base that we need to work together to make sure that they are robust and they can survive with the OEMs.
It's a question for you too, maybe, Buta, on what the impact has been immediately and where you kind of are, where you stand.
I think short term, I think we're all in a very similar position where it's impacted every single business in a drastic way. The real positive news is I think we've all acted in a really responsible way to look after our people, make sure they're safe, you know, ensure that they worked at home when important, and really be flexible in our mentality with regards to work. And that's probably shaken up a few ideas. The other positive is that since or post-COVID, every single government has said they want to accelerate zero emissions as a post-COVID recovery. And also every government has earmarked monies to actually deliver that. And that's probably accelerated it from pre-COVID. You know, we were moving very slowly towards zero emissions, but this is actually accelerated because people saw the benefits of everything stopping, cleaner air, bluer skies, as everybody was saying. And it was kind of punctuated the point. And I think government saw that and saw that the best way to recover out of this was invest in clean, green technologies, which will be sustainable for the future. And it's now the race to be the leading green and clean technology country that will take us forward.
Has it changed the way that you work? If I could put it both to you and to Joerg. I mean, has it brought a benefits to you in as much as you have seen new ways of working that could not, for various reasons, be got to before?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, it was, I think, for all of us, quite amazing to see how advanced and how well you can work with online work from home and with video conferences, everything. I mean, just our electric van, we did the last development stages, almost everything, not on site. You know, our engineers developed things in the virtual room, and the project was still on time. Amazing. Despite COVID, despite that interruption, we managed to develop and have SUP physically then on time, on schedule, despite COVID. Amazing. This was feasible and possible due to video conference, all the digital technology. But on the other hand, and that's a very important point I really would like to make here. I mean, I think you may agree, all these, you know, home office work on a screen does not replace physical contact and meeting personally. That's my firm opinion. And therefore at LEVC, I was very strong encouraging people, of course, voluntarily, to show off on site, as we did it, like you, testing every second day. My whole team was tested every day, my management team. Then vaccination was rolled out like hell. In the meantime, I think everyone is vaccinated, and where we can avoid, we avoid masks, because it's so important. And there was a feedback from my team. So we were so keen to be back, to be in the office again, with distance and all. We had a rota system, whatever we did to make it all happen. But it's a different world again. And of course, some things will remain. And I'm sure we will always, a few days will, by 1 or 2 days a week, home office will work. You will do some digital work. However, we firmly believe, and this is a lesson we have learned, you need people to do social interaction, talk to each other, look in the face, speak to each other. Completely different dynamic than doing something every day, 12 hours in front of a screen. It's a very important thing. And I think for us as human beings, it's very important so we go down the track very fast again. We are social and emotional people, and we have to go down, otherwise we die, really.
Yes.
It's so important.
Can I say to our online audience, you are still human beings, but you are not participating with the sheer electricity that there is in this room. If only you could see them. They are fizzing. Everyone is fizzing. Again, both on the business of bringing people back together, do you agree with what Joerg has just said? But also more widely, are there changes in the way that you work? Have you surprised yourself with the ability to do things more quickly, for instance, than you thought was possible before?
I think employees, and time will tell, what the new world of working looks like. And I think we're all talking at the moment about this concept of hybrid working, but ask somebody how to define hybrid working. It depends on the individual, it depends on the business. And I think people will do what is right for them. So people do enjoy being in each other's company. They do become more productive when there's a hands-on task together, but also there's a time and a place when actually sitting quietly in a room and your laptop can actually be extraordinarily productive. I think one of the significant changes that we've seen from McLaren's perspective that I've experienced personally is not just in how we work physically, but actually how we work together. So the pandemic really demonstrated how interconnected all of our businesses are, not just in the automotive industry, but beyond, be that through our supply chains, be that through our logistics change, be it through our customer bases. Like, everybody was affected by this, and we were all affected in very, very similar ways. So that interconnectivity, I think, and interaction has really shown us that, we like to think that we're individual businesses competing with one another, but the reality is we do have a lot in common and work together very much, even if it's in an indirect way. And certainly from our experience of working in the Ventilator Challenge UK, I think we saw the strength and might of UK manufacturing industry and R&D industry, where we had businesses not just in automotive, but right the way across many sectors, uniting together around a common goal and be able to deliver something that, frankly, at the time it started, I think we all would have kind of secretly behind closed doors would have said, maybe this is a bit impossible. Yeah. But that showed for me how collaboration, not just within our own sector, but actually cross industry, and an alignment around what we're trying to achieve from a technology perspective could really strengthen our organizations, not just our OEM organizations, but our supply chains and potentially beyond. And that, I think, sense of collaboration is one of the big opportunities that will come out of the pandemic moving forward.
Talking of interactivity, we have had an online question. It comes from Paul Foote of Withers and Rogers, and it's really to all of you. The question is this: is it realistic to expect that the UK can be a world leader, a world-leading innovator in technologies with broad applications in volume, zero emissions vehicles, or are we better focusing our investment in devising and protecting novel solutions in more niche industries, such as those represented by this very panel and by rival Volta, other organisations as well? Michael, what's your thinking on that?
I don't think we can afford to concentrate on just one segment. It's far too dangerous. If you look at the car makers in the UK, we've got a fantastic range of different brands, different volume potentials, and we go from mass market volume cars right up to the brands that Ruth and I work in. It would be far too dangerous to concentrate on just a niche segment when actually, the volume producers create jobs, create wealth for the country. And therefore, we've got to find some solutions that match all of this very broad range of manufacturers that we have in this country. And I guess this is where, when we talk about technology, we need the universities to work collaboratively with the OEMs to work together on these technologies that can go across a breadth of makers. And we're very lucky we have the Battery Innovation Centre, the WMG, and we've got great skills in this area where really we need to exploit that and create jobs and wealth for the UK.
On the subject of batteries, which was one I was going to get onto, but since you bring it up, where are we? What's the state of play?
So we're not in the right position yet, and we need to very quickly. You know, we hear that there's 6 makers, Britishvolt, LG, Samsung, all ready to invest. But every day that goes by and we don't invest in battery making capability, we're losing our competitiveness. And I'm sure that you've heard this a few times already today. You know, we've got to commit at some point to at least 1 gigafactory, and then, you know, the saying of build it and they will come true. And this needs government support. 2 identified sites in Blythe, in Coventry. 1 needs to get off the mark quickly. Just look at the model in Sweden with Northvolt, and look at the investment that we've had from the German car makers in a Swedish battery manufacturer. If we don't get off the fence, we're going to get left behind. And the battery is one component within an industry, but just think of the number of jobs we have directly, indirectly related to our industry. And the message is very clear. We will be electrified, but without batteries, we don't have an industry.
And you're nodding.
Yeah, it's actually, I always have to say, you know, it's so incredible that the whole European automotive industry just forgot about the battery. We just gave it away and gave it up. And no political support, nothing for quite a while. It's incredible. I really believe so. Because we are talking about electrification and e-mobility. And somehow we forgot, apparently, that this is a core component. I mean, you were saying so. The battery is that piece, yeah, that still costs 35% of our whole car at the moment, which is still too expensive, which is still limiting us regarding range and everything. And it's a core component. We just gave it up. And I'm really glad in the meantime that a lot of people are waking up, companies, but also politicians, and really pushing that now finally dramatically and really fast. Because as you said, I mean, really, Michael, every day is a day too much.
Yes.
And I still don't believe it, that we forgot about it. And hopefully now we are catching up fast. We have to certainly get away from the dependency that we have at the moment from just Asian suppliers. And certainly something, I mean, as you mentioned, Germany is moving fast, and a lot of projects in the UK, we need the gigafactory as soon as possible. And we also need it anyway, because according to the European EU-UK free trade agreement by 27, we need to source a battery either in the European Union or the UK. Otherwise, we can't do zero tariff trade again. Yeah, so we need it. So let's build a gigafactory and we'll certainly use it.
Okay, we've got a question right in the middle there. Hold on a second. Let's get a microphone. Yes, here we go.
Steve Fowler from Auto Express here. Just a question for Michael and the rest of the panel, really. You said if we build a gigafactory in the UK, then manufacturing will come. If we don't, will manufacturing leave and have to go where the gigafactories are? You're all representing British brands. Could we see British brands leave the UK to go where the gigafactories are?
Michael, take that first.
I think there's a risk. You know, these are big, heavy items to transport across Europe. Joerg's talked about future trade agreements. Steve, I'd prefer not to be in that position. I'd prefer to be in a position where, you know, the UK government, together with the battery manufacturers, really take the bull by the horns and just decide quickly to protect our industry. I don't even want to think about what the other option would look like. You know, and we've seen it with Nissan, you know, not a giga plant, but a battery manufacturer right next to the OEM has been fantastic for Nissan. You know, the Leaf has been, you know, the first into market, but we need 4 or 5 giga plants in order to make this industry prosper in the UK. And that's really what we should be concentrating on.
Ruth?
I think one of the things we shouldn't lose sight of in the context of this conversation of kind of what happens after the debate around a gigafactory is resolved, which I hope is resolved by gigafactories being built in the UK. But what happens to the technology and how do we develop it? And the comment that you made a little bit earlier around how should we focus on kind of the niche area rather than larger OEM, our industry at our volumes is the incubator of new technologies. So very often what's developed in a supercar and a McLaren car actually rolls out into the broader OEM mass market. We have the ability to move very quickly, to invest at a relatively low cost, but also to bring those R&D ideas to rapid industrialization. And that is one of the strengths that we have in the UK, the ability not just to research, but actually to bring all of that R&D to life. And in the context, I think, of electrification and alternative fuel sources, we really need to keep the focus both on what do we need to do in the immediate term to retain and strengthen the existing industry, but also how do we leapfrog everybody else and actually be the future of what the transport industry will look like.
I mean, you've focused, and obviously there is still time to be in this game, but the question was, if we're not in the game longer term, will manufacturers leave?
Well, it'll come down to cost. And as Michael said, batteries are very, very heavy objects, and the further you have to transport them, the more expensive your manufacturing cost is.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about hydrogen, Buta, because, you know, obviously, particularly in your sector, it's hugely important. We talk a lot about it. We talk about it now, talking about it increasingly for domestic fuel, replacing our gas boilers and all the rest of it. It's obviously it's an area that you've been interested in for some time. Where do we stand?
I mean, just to take a step back, if you look at batteries, China invested in batteries billions of pounds 5-10 years ago, and are about 70% of the market share right now. So to catch up, they not only own the manufacturing, but also the raw materials. So as a country, we have to balance that. One is by building battery and technology and gigastacks here, but secondly, having alternative methodologies of fuel. Hydrogen is an easy solution for us. Why? Because we're an island, we've got plenty of wind around this island, we've got plenty of other ways of producing cheap electricity, which is 70% of the cost of hydrogen. The second thing is we have got great universities that are already developing things like fuel cells and the fuel cell stacks required to actually use that hydrogen and convert it into electricity to drive motors. So we're in a really good position. China recently changed their funding from battery electrics into hydrogen because they realize that's a new technology. European market have indicated billions of pounds into hydrogen. This country have set up a hydrogen committee to talk about hydrogen. If we don't put the investment in now, if we don't start producing the hydrogen at volume right now, then that's going to be another industry that we're behind and catching up in the future. And now is the time to invest in cheap electricity, hydrogen stations, and producing gas, so industries then can use it and develop new vehicles for it.
In our last couple of minutes, if anyone else wants to ask a question, feel free. Yes. So, hold on a second. I think we need to get a microphone to you, right here at the front on my left, in order that around the world, in every capital city and some even smaller places, they can hear you. Yes. I think if you just go for it.
Thanks very much.
Yeah,
yes, it's working. Matt Weston, Member of Parliament, Warwick and Leamington. Thanks very much. It's terrific to hear. Just wanted to pick up with Buta about we talk about charging points and networks for EV and how important they are, critical really to get consumers to move. What you were just talking about hydrogen stations. I'm interested to know what noises you're getting from government in terms of what that network will need to look like if we are to transition heavy goods vehicles, buses, coaches to hydrogen. Is that something that's very clear to you?
Yes, I mean, to be honest with you, the government will release something called the Zebra funding, which is funding both infrastructure and buses and converting them from diesel into zero emissions product. Whether it's EV or hydrogen, it's the operator's choice. So that kind of helps. The importance is that buses return back to a depot, so the infrastructure is easier to do. You can then create a demand for the hydrogen and therefore then build on that base to go to other vehicles like trucks and heavy goods vehicles who predominantly return back to base as well. If you look at the Amazon or those types of operations, they pick up goods, deliver, and then pick up goods from the same point again. There's no reason that infrastructure shouldn't be around those hubs, and therefore quick, easy delivery to change certain vehicles, heavier vehicles, into hydrogen, allowing EVs for lighter vehicles. And then therefore you've got a balance. And I think the government started to think that way. It's joining the dots in a quicker way. I'll give you an example. They've announced 4,000 buses. The Hydrogen Council is talking about 5 gigawatts by 2025. If we converted those 4,000 buses into hydrogen buses, you'd get a demand quicker and the supply would then arrive quicker as well. And we would be ahead of every other market with regards to hydrogen.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Matt. Thank you all for your questions, both here and around the world. That is it for this panel. A huge round of applause, please, worldwide for our panelists. Thank you so much.